And welcome back to Advanced Composition with Professor Kent Lee. We're continuing our look at grammar and style issues. We're going to look at modifiers on page 150, particularly what's called modifier attachment. So when you see a sentence ending with a phrase like with binoculars, like at number 1, with a telescope, 3, in my pajamas, what does it modify? What is it, if you draw a kind of a syntactic tree, a tree structure diagram of the sentence, with binoculars, would it attach to robber? So is it modifying robber? Does the robber have binoculars? Or is it attached higher up to cop? The cop. Is it the cop who has binoculars? Who has the telescope? John or the man on the mountain? Who is in my pajamas? I or the animal? Discuss these for a minute and what do you think? Are these always clear? What would be the preferred interpretation in these cases? Okay, 1 and 2 are actually ambiguous, but we would tend to make good guesses based on what linguists and psychologists call our world knowledge, our knowledge of the world and how things work in the world. So based on that, and also the verbs, we would tend to put binoculars with spied, the cop spied, how did he spy? And telescope with saw, John saw, so John has the telescope. But if you put it in a different context, it would change the interpretation. The robber was using binoculars to look into people's windows to see if they had anything worth stealing. Then the cop spied the robber with binoculars. Okay, but without a context, you would rely on a world knowledge. But these are truly ambiguous. Now, 3 is not actually ambiguous. It's just a silly joke. Groucho Marx was a famous comedian in the early 20th century. And this was his most famous joke. So nobody would normally think of elephants wearing pajamas. Whenever people first hear the sentence, you automatically assume that I am in my pajamas. And so humor often relies on playing with people's expectations, and this kind of reverses the expectations, and the elephant has the pajamas. It's a famous joke. 4 is kind of a variation on that. 5, this is from a cute internet meme, an internet joke. My dogs have been chasing people on bicycle, and most people would just automatically assume people who are riding bicycles. And the person responds, my dogs don't own bikes. Okay, so not dogs on bicycles, not the dogs riding bikes. I saw a moose on my way to work this morning. How do you know he was on my way to work? So I was on my way to work and I saw a moose. This is a joke from a TV show, I think, or an internet meme. 7, I think most people would not have trouble understanding it, but if you think about it, yeah, it is ambiguous. Who is running or jogging? Where's the pickup truck? So it's not somebody jogging in a pickup truck, but jogging through the campus. 8, again, most people would not have trouble with this. Our world knowledge and common sense for most people would help us to understand it. But if you think about it for a minute, oh yeah, I can interpret it a different way. During the hearing, somebody was using waterboarding during the hearing. Same thing, 9, moms who have tattoos, not the kids who have tattoos, of course. Um, 10 and 11, less clear. So those are maybe where you have to be careful because those are kind of ambiguous. I think the meaning is fairly clear if you follow common sense, but it's just too easy to think of the alternate interpretation because of the topic matter. So I think in 10 and 11, the writer should be more careful anyway. All right, next we're going to look at participles. So it's kind of a related topic. So page 156 and 157. So take a look at the examples at the top, the first section. Number A, investigating, da da da. And then number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and why do those sound odd? Okay, so while A is fairly clear, 1, 2, 3, 4 sound kind of odd. These are famous examples of what are called dangling modifiers. Dangling is like hanging from the wrong place. Entering the room, the vase broke. So a participle is generally in standard English going to modify the, if it's at the start of the sentence, it's going to modify the noun that it precedes. So entering the room is going to be understood to modify the vase. So is the vase entering the room? We know that it should mean that somebody was entering the room. So it would be better to say while she was entering the room, as she was entering the room, the vase broke. That would be clearer. So 1 is just awkward because of this weird interpretation that the grammar forces, and most teachers and even I would agree 1 is bad. Same reason number 2. Now traditionally in English, it was more common to refer to planes and ships as she. Oh, she's a fine ship. She's a fine plane. So that's ambiguity number 2. Whose giant nose is pointing down the runway? My aunt's giant nose or the plane's? It's ambiguous and it's not very clear. So 2 would really not be good. Waiting for the bus, I mean, you would kind of use common sense, but still it's not grammatically good for formal English, especially. The same thing for 4. Are the findings doing the experiments? No. It's a result. So 4 is not worded very clearly. Now looking at some better examples. Now look at the other examples on this page, 5 through 10. Which sound better? 5 through 7, which sound better or flow better? And then for 8 through 10, which sound better? What do you think? Okay, number 5, you kind of got 2 main verbs, has caused, and eliminated. So 2 main verbs, and that kind of gives equal kind of highlighting or attention or foreground to both verbs. And if you want to do that, that might be called for here. That's your intention. But probably it might be better to change the flow. So 6, it kind of breaks it with a comma. So there's a bit of a pause, which eliminated. So it's kind of showing that this was a result. But you can get an even better flow in 7 by eliminating to a participle. So it's a whole participle clause, so it's a whole participle clause. And what's its function here? What is the function of this clause here? And why is it better? Well, you don't have as much of a break in your intonation as with number 6, I think, but also it just flows better because you're kind of, well, we talked about foreground and background. So 5, 2 main clauses, everything's foregrounded. I think maybe we talked about things like because and since, subordinate clauses, kind of background things. So I could say da da da, but da da da, or I could say da da da, although da da da, and the although kind of backgrounds that clause somewhat, which can make for a better, smoother flow. So I think 7 is a smoother flow because that participle clause, because it's a participle and not a main verb, is kind of backgrounding things somewhat, and is presenting a result. This is a result of that. So 7, the main clause, is the main point, and then the result is in a participle clause, and the logical connection is kind of backgrounded because you can kind of understand that that's a logical result. Same thing in 8 and 9. We could say this results, that's fine. Or you can background it a little bit more and get rid of that discourse pronoun and have a nice smooth flow by using suggesting, which is kind of like, what's the purpose of that? It's more like the implication or the result. The implication or result is that this suggests the dominance of da-da-da. And don't worry if you don't understand the words. These are some examples from some scientific texts. Okay, look at the next set of examples, the bottom of 156 and 157. What are the functions of these participle clauses? And it also includes some past participles like based on, as well as ing, present participles using. Okay, so if you look at these are providing various explanatory functions, but in a way that backgrounds certain things and makes for better flow using our assumptions. So it's kind of describing how the experiment was done, methods, but it's kind of putting a little less emphasis on we used our assumptions. It backgrounds that part, just using, it puts the main focus, the highlight on the main clause. Number 2, based on, is a result of, so kind of like result, background information, it's backgrounded. And number 3, measured at, meaning they were measured at, but that's kind of secondary information. You don't want to put too much emphasis on it, so just a participle clause, measured at 523 Kelvin degrees. Number 4, combined with, so the logical connection is kind of backgrounded, like after it was combined with or when it's combined with. And it's kind of also explaining maybe process and procedures. So you see participle clauses here kind of performing certain functions, explanations, background, secondary information. Number 5, resulting in. So it's kind of creating a better flow, and the participle clause is indicating a result, an outcome, an implication. Or in 6, an implication, a logical implication. 7, also a logical implication. So things like background information, causes that you don't want to emphasize too much, effects, results that are backgrounded. So you've got the main focus on, like in 7, mass production of the waveform has been limited, and the result is showing or descriptive, showing something. So participle clauses in academic writing, especially technical writing, are used like this, sometimes kind of like discourse pronouns. And so they may not necessarily be directly modifying, in academic English anyway, not necessarily directly modifying the noun, the next 2, but doing something else. So in the more common examples, again, entering the room, the vase broke. That's not good because the vase is not entering the room. But that rule that says the participle has to directly modify the noun that is next to, it gets kind of relaxed in these academic contexts where the participle phrase, a whole clause, participle clause, is kind of acting, it's like a paraphrase for, it's like functioning like a discourse pronoun. This result, so 7, for these for these reasons that they're showing slow response. It's kind of like saying, and this result or this outcome showed slower response. Or 6, suggesting that, meaning this result suggests that, but you kind of background that grammar function. And so suggesting is not directly modifying recording, the noun before it, but it's modifying the entire discourse. It's modifying the discourse. So just like the discourse pronoun that we saw earlier can refer to an idea, a clause, a sentence, not just an object. Likewise here, the participles in academic English, suggesting is not directly modifying recording or intelligibility. It's modifying the entire clause in order to comment on implications or background or results. And that's the function of participles. And so these are some good models to learn from as you're reading maybe more academic English in style. Okay, that's it for now. Next time we're going to look at, the next video will be kind of a shorter one, I think, on a special grammar feature called inversion. See you soon.